On today's episode of IT Unplugged, I sit down with Mike, who's a certified CMMC professional, where we look at everything compliance for the DoD.
At M2 Technology, we're on a mission to make IT accessible to everyone. Join us on our journey to demystify the ever-evolving world of business technology. Are you ready to get unplugged?
Welcome back to IT Unplugged. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Mike.
Mike, we're back again, and today we're talking about something that's pretty in-depth. It's CMMC. Before we get into that, though, and what CMMC is, you just became a CMMC certified professional. What did that all entail?
Yeah, it's a lengthy in-person or remote classroom session, 50 hours of which, and then at the end of that, you're best prepared to take an exam. The exam is also lengthy, in excess of 200 questions, and it is a high failure rate, and it's timed. So if you were to pass that, then you obtain a certification, all of which there's fees and there's things around that to purchase it also. Yeah,
and you took a week off of work to do this then, or?
It was done in tandem with work because I'm just so bored frequently that I was like, how else can I fill my week, right?
Yeah. When you were going through this, I was not envious. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's 200 plus questions, a bunch of studying. Yeah, I was like, yeah, this seems like a lot. So yeah. Well, there's a reason that there's not that many of you out there, right? Because it's not the easiest thing to do. And just for our viewers, what is CMMC? So CMMC stands for the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And, when it comes to CMMC, this is specifically for companies that are working with the DoD. So, if in the past you've had to follow some NIST standards to work with the DoD, a lot of self-assessment, things like that. But essentially, like, you're a primary for a DoD contract, and maybe the primary is doing some things related to cybersecurity that are good. Once again, self-assessment. But then when it comes to like the subcontractors that are dealing with the same information, the security levels just kind of kept falling off. And it seemed like the government kind of needed to step in and say, all right, here's something that's a little bit more set in stone. And let's put a couple more standards behind this because essentially, like, the DoD contractors were being targeted a lot of the times because of the information that they were holding.
Yeah, and pause for 1 second just to relate that to like tangible terms here, right? So contractors and then subcontractors and things like that, right? If someone's contract is to make a missile, right? And then, hey, we can make this missile, but we're going to use a subcontractor to do the engineering on how much pressure is exerted on the wings when it's flying at full speed, and then someone else, a different subcontractor, so now we're 3 layers deep, right, is making the fins. Like, they're actually making the fin portion, but that's it. That's all they make. Someone else makes the electronics that live inside the missile head to know where it's going and what it's doing, right? And then someone else makes the brains for the guidance. And there's all these different contractors flying around, but each of them kind of need to know somewhat of the bigger picture, right? So maybe it's a blueprint or it's a plan or it's an electrical diagram or something that would be probably CUI, so confidential, unclassified information, right? Maybe it would be a different level of information that is or is not classified, so they would probably need to abide by some type of certification here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good point. And I feel like supply chain attacks, they kind of say, have been increasing where, it's like, okay, here's this huge company that's out there and essentially it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to crack into these guys. You know what I mean? Like maybe that primary that's got 500 employees, you know what I mean? Like doing a large part of it. But they're like, but I know they use the subcontractors over here. So if I can get in here, well, then I can get into the big company. And
we can't break into Oshkosh, but we can break into Joe's machine shop.
Yeah.
And, Joe's Machine Shop works with Oshkosh all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, it also puts a little bit more onus on the people that have won those contracts as well, because they can't just pick like any subcontractor, right? They need to go ahead and with these new CMMC standards that are kind of rolling out, they need to pick a subcontractor that is CMMC certified, depending on what type of information will be at different levels. So,
right.
So I guess that like kind of leads into a good question. Who needs to be focused on CMMC certification?
The biggest determination there would be the types of contracts that you take. Right. So if Joe's machine shop, if you're Joe and you have a machine shop, like hit us up. But Joe's machine shop, maybe they do one contract a year to make, missile tips. Like that's a fun topic because missiles are cool, right? So he makes those. He machines them down, and they do $25,000 a year for that contract. Okay, not a very big contract, right? If this comes across your desk and it's saying, hey, you have to achieve certification, and it's very, very costly, and it outweighs that production, then maybe let's put some consideration into that. But if a big chunk of your business is DoD work, of which is fitting the role of somebody that would need to have a certain level of compliance, then for sure you will be needing to obtain that. Also, depending on who you're working with, let's say it's, we're picking on Oshkosh, right? Oshkosh communicates to you that, hey, you do this for us, you need to have level 1 by this date. Yep. Or, hey, we're not going to give you contracts. Or maybe you need to have level 2 started by this date, or you're not going to get your contracts. And there's proof behind, okay, we did this, right? We're working towards level 2, or we're currently level 1. To show that, to then keep getting fed work.
Yeah, there seems, so, essentially companies that are working on DoD contractors, or they're subcontractor for someone that has the main primary DoD contract. With that being said, this just rolled out in late 2024. Should companies, maybe they haven't gotten information yet, like, hey, you will need to be compliant on here. Should companies be jumping on this now, or should they be kind of like waiting maybe for their primary to tell them, hey, you need to get certified?
Absolutely jumping on it now. It's a lengthy process regardless. So if the guideline is communicated that you need to have level 1 completed, or your organization needs to be level 1 CMMC compliant by the beginning of 2026, or the end of 2026. That's a year and a half away, or whatever. That's 2 years away, right? No big deal. We'll figure it out before then. But you've never necessarily started your cybersecurity journey elsewhere. That could take a very long time for that organization, or maybe somebody's all buttoned up and they're very secure and it's a great environment.Maybe getting level 1 is going to be very quick for them. Yeah. But it still takes time, right? So making sure that you're ahead of the curve there, and you're going to be secure is important. If communication is that you need to have level 2 by a certain date, or maybe there isn't communication, but that what you work on fits into the realm of, we're going to need to have some sort of level 2 or level 1, or we're going to need to have something. It's just no one told us yet. Yeah, it's going to happen. You just, you're kind of gambling right now. Like, well, no one told us, so let's just see how far we can go without it.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing, is it's like a real risk reward thing, right? Like, yeah, we'll wait. Well, the DoD has come out and said that for future contracts, they will tell you need to be level 1 certified or level 2 certified to work on this. Right. And if you're not, you just don't get to participate anymore.
You can't bid.
Yeah, you can't even bid on it. So, these places that have a lot of DoD work definitely want to look at this beforehand. You kind of mentioned it too, maybe a subcontractor that's doing some work in a really small amount. I think there's some hard decisions that kind of need to be made of, hey, I do DoD contract work, but it's like $5,000 a year. It's this little tiny thing. Absolutely. And I'm a sub.
Do we want to expand into DoD? Do we not? Are we able to? Yeah. I guess that's kind of the thing as we get to a couple places recently, like, hey, our whole product line is making these things for these places. And then occasionally, we make this thing for the DoD, for someone, right? Okay, that's cool. Do you plan on expanding that? No, we do 10 of these a month. Yep. It's a good little contract. If you're not looking to expand that, and you can't really expand it, hey, there's no more work that's been offered to us, that's up to you. Maybe it doesn't make financial sense, but I'm not a financial planner. So yeah.
It's also tough though too. Well, okay, let's play devil's advocate here. So CMMC is something that's coming out. People are going to need to have it, but let's say there's like usually 10 bidders for this contract, and you're like, you know what, I'm gung-ho, I'm going to get this, I'm going to make an investment, and maybe the other like 8 of them aren't. Yeah. And now you're competing in an environment that before you were like, ooh, I'm not as likely to get these contracts.
You stand out for sure.
Yeah, but now maybe you are. Maybe when you're one of the only places that's actually applicable to apply. So I think there's a lot of internal discussions that need to happen with, manufacturers to say, what path do I kind of want to go on? Because there is some investment that needs to take place. But with that investment that needs to take place, there's also like this kind of scary thing. I've been reading a couple things out there, and it's like, yeah, CMMC, no way that we can possibly, become CMMC certified, get a certification. But there's a huge difference between level 1 certification and level 2. So can you kind of run us through what's the difference between, like, first off, let's just do level 1. What's level 1 CMMC certification kind of look like?
Level 1 is more or less self-certification, similar to the ways of the past, right, with 17 different touch points there. Policies and procedures and best practices are started, or in some cases, like just enforced, right? But being that there's not necessarily a paid for certification like level 2 and an examination of your environment, it's very similar to the ways of the past. Like we just said, where it's self-certified, right? So an internal IT at an organization or a qualified individual, if you don't really feel like diving into that yourself, is the one that is then running that for you, right? So you're maintaining that, and the changes that you're saying that you're doing, you're keeping alive, and you're making the changes as time goes on. Maybe that is where the type of work that you interact with from the DoD, maybe that's where that ends, and that's all that you need by a certain given date. Yeah. If not, then you would need to have level 2 certification. Yeah.
Well, so let's stay on 1 for a second, because like looking at it, if you have any federal contract information, you're probably going to need to be level 1, right? So if you're dealing with that and that stuff, it seems like it's really scary, but I kind of want to say like it's not as scary as you think when it comes to level 1. It's almost described as like basic cyber hygiene. And there's a lot of different numbers that get thrown out. Like, how long should it take to be level 1 certified? It all depends. I mean, if you were already working with us and you were taking cybersecurity really seriously, it's not going to take long to get yourself ready to go and do the self-assessment and, put your organization in the database for level 1, because that's the basic stuff that your company should already be doing. It's more so, how do I demonstrate it and document it? Yep.
How do you properly document, or how do you tell, hey, I'm doing this, right? And they're like, oh, okay. Sounds good. Yeah. It's one thing to just be doing it, but you need to be able to document that you are in fact doing it correctly to then, verify that you're doing it correctly if challenged.
I guess I would say, like, if you are a manufacturer which we see them every once in a while, that have like never done anything with cybersecurity, you might be in for a little bit more of a heavy lift. And you do some DoD stuff, because I've seen.
Same could be said with, like you said, if it's an existing customer of ours, right, and they reach out to us, hey, let's get level 1. You have all of the stuff in place, right? You've got the correct router, and you've got the correct this and that and whatever. Like, great. But you don't have the correct policies because it's really annoying that we have to lock our computer frequently or something like that, right? Maybe there's still, although you have all the right things, you're not doing the correct procedures on the back end, right? So there's still some buttoning up that would need to happen.
So so level 1, depending on where you are, it can be, not that hard to get to level 1. Estimates, it could take you 20 hours for some documentation, all the way up to, we've never done anything. It might take you 100 hours. All kind of depends. They also throw out some crazy numbers, but I feel like maybe if you're a huge organization that's never done anything, that can continue to rise. But that's all self-assessment. So then we get to level 2, which the big differentiator there is the confidential, unclassified information. So if you're using, or if you're handling any CUI, then you get into this different realm. And it's not really I wouldn't say it's a gradual jump from level 1 to level 2. Yeah. So can you kind of like walk us through what that looks like a little bit?
It's kind of the deep end, right? Yeah. So level 1, remember we said there's 17 touch points. Level 2 has 110. So it doesn't necessarily increase proportionately unless level 3 is 10,000, then you'd be like, okay,
exponentially
it's times 100. Of course that's how that works. Yep. So that's fun. And the different topics there each have their own proper phrasing and questions it may ask. So an example quick, right? Hey, it's not just asking, hey, what's your password policy? Oh, our password policy is a timeout of this many days, and this is the amount of characters and special characters, and you have to have multi-factor and this and that and whatever. So you have like a sentence about that, right? Or a paragraph about that. No, it's just asking, maybe it would say, hey, do you have a password policy? So you'd have to have a properly phrased answer to that. Like, we do in fact have a password policy, it's compliant, blah, 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 right? Then maybe the next question is, okay, so for your password policy, do you have a timeout? Yes, hey, this is our timer, right? So it gets really, really granular, and that's where it takes a lot of time because it has to be phrased accurately. So then when you hand that off to the next step here, so an actual assessor, they're not then starting over and spending another 300 hours going back through phrasing things correctly. You want to try to help them, cut down that time. That's what the pre-work is for, right? That's where we get roped in to be able to sort that out.
Yeah, let's talk about when we get roped in, right? So what is a certified CMMC professional? What does that mean? And like, what is your role? If let's say a company were to come on and say, hey, we need to be level 2 certified. Like, help us out. Where are you doing everything? Are you like going in there, doing their password policy, documenting it, and then doing their assessment? Like, how does it look?
So pause for 1 second. So if an existing customer was to come, right, the whole point with CMMC is that you have an independent, to obtain level 2, you have an independent assessor doing the testing or doing the assessing, right? So being that we are not independent in that case because we're helping that person, also that my certification is not that of an assessor, it's that of a CCP, I can't do the assessing. Right. Gotcha. So whether it's an existing customer or a prospect, but where we would come in then is, hey, we're obtaining level 1. Our internal IT staff is working on that. Can you help us kind of check things out and make sure it lines up and looks accurately in your opinion? You're like, yep. Yeah. Let's run through this. Things are looking good. Perfect. You guys are level 1 certified when that time comes. We would like to achieve level 2 by the end of the year, or hey, that's really ambitious, but hey, let's try to achieve level 2 by, X time frame. Sounds good. Let's start working through this. In most cases, probably, but maybe not, there would be an internal technical resource, right? So then it's figuring out that line of, okay, what is this policy that you guys have? Oh, this is our policy for that. Perfect. I'm going to dissect that and then answer questions accurately and the correct phrasing. So then when assessment time comes, then all of the answers to the test are already provided to you, and you just kind of hand over that documentation to the assessor. If the internal staff either doesn't exist or exists, but maybe some of the things that we're asking, we keep using this example, but like, let's say password policy, right? They're like, I don't even know. Like, yeah, we have something, but like, can you figure it out for us? Sure. Yeah, we'll dive into the weeds and then we'll figure out the current policy and explain to them if it's not right? Like explain to them, hey, this is what you currently have. Cool. You have a large number of characters that's required, but these, 30% of your staff has not ever changed their password since they were hired in 2008, right? Like, we would explain to them very nicely how that's not going to fly for the exam and give them remediation steps. And then we would either do that for them, so build out the actual changes, or if then their internal staff wants to jump back in, then that's okay too.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the benefits to having, like you as a certified professional, because somebody could come in, and just say, hey, essentially like reading off what you need and how you need to phrase it, and be like, hey, yeah, this is the thing that you need, and this is how it has to be phrased. Okay, like I'll come back when you guys do that. Yeah, and then like check it after, which is a possibility. Maybe internal IT teams want to do that, but like already knowing how to do that stuff, so then like, yeah, I can help you implement it.
Yeah.
It's the hands-on.
Working with the environment.
Yeah, exactly. It's super helpful. And
in my head, it makes a lot of sense if you as an MSP are working with either a small amount or a large amount of your customer base are working with DoD contracts from like an engineering side or manufacturing side, to have some type of either certification or just large knowledge of CMMC, just to assist with this process, right?
Yeah.
So better setting yourself and setting your client up for success when deploying a new server or deploying changes to their environment. If you're just tailoring it around CMMC already, or CUI already, or ISO compliance already, as opposed to just having to start over when that time comes. That doesn't really reflect well on you if that's the case, right? You deploy a whole environment in 2024, and then that manufacturing facility decides to pursue level 2 compliance, the following year. Hey, didn't we just deploy all this last year? Like, why do we have to redo all this?
Yep.
And oh, well, we just didn't know about that. Well, you don't know about that. Like, you do our cybersecurity. How you don't know about that, right? Like, that doesn't look too hot.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing to kind of look at. Like, CMMC is based on NIST, which we've been dealing with for however many years, right? So
there's a lot of overlap with all the different types of compliance. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like, oh my gosh, do you see the stuff that they're having us do now? Like, we've been dealing with NIST 800-171 for a long time. So if you were already working on that, it makes it so much easier. It's like the people that did the training beforehand, let's just say, are gonna be way better off when it comes to running this race, versus the people that were like, I think we can sneak by without doing anything. And if you're that person, it's okay to reach out. It's just you're going to have a little bit more work to do.
I think that was speaking personally, I think that was one of the most surprising things when going through classroom work, was like, all right, I know about this NIST stuff, and like, I know a lot about HIPAA and PCI compliance, so like it's not going to be anything like CMMC though. It's so much higher. It's all DoD stuff, and there's these assessors, and they're like mythical creatures that come in out of nowhere, and there's so few of them in the world. And then you're kind of reading through documentation, you're like, man, this is all really similar.
Yeah.
It's it's not the same, but like it's really, really similar. It's just very, very granular and broken down, and now enforced. And thinking from like a taxpayer's perspective, right? We're getting really introspective now, but that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, this place that makes this one specific part on a warship has to have a certain level of certifiable cybersecurity.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
If the car dealership down the road does, like I would hope that the place that makes a missile does.
Exactly. With that, so you kind of mentioned this too, documentation, okay? It's been documented, right? Yeah, sorry, that was my bad.
Good one.
Nice. That documentation is probably going to be the hardest part about this whole thing. Why is that?
Because how you would want to phrase something as just a human, whether you're technical or not, is probably not the correct way that the DoD wants to see it when being assessed. So having gone through proper training for a long period of time, having gone through proper training to know how to navigate that question and answer accurately and truthfully, is the expertise there. And then knowing how to make the changes on the back end, right? So it's one thing to just phrase an answer correctly, but then the environment's not actually set up for it, and there's no proof behind it, then you're not passing anyways. You could have all of the things phrased super, super accurately and it's perfect, but nothing's actually built out. Well, you're not going to pass.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I think that's like even really large companies that are going, I got an internal IT team of 30 people and we can do everything on CMMC too. That's the thing. It's the documentation and doing it right so you can prove it all when someone comes in. Because the last thing you want is to pay an assessor, have them come in, have them spend a bunch of time, and then, not have it done. Even if you're doing the things, you have to have it documented correctly. So
exactly. And it's at the end of the day too, just like HIPAA, PCI, anything, right? It's auditable. So if that time was to come, or if pressured, right, it's totally auditable. If we're picking on Oshkosh again, and I feel like that's a bad. We're knocking on the wrong door here, but
we'll never work with Oshkosh.
Yeah, let's say Oshkosh. They're these. This was kind of sus. Hey, let's look into that. Let's figure this out. And that manufacturing facility gets audited, or that engineering facility gets audited, and then it turns out that they're lying. They self-assessed incorrectly for level 1. Definitely not going to reflect well on them, but also if you're using an MSP, or you're using like a CCP, a different CCP, on them, right? Because that's a service you paid for at that point, and it was a complete floozy. Like that's not good.
I think that might keep some people away too. You know what I mean? I don't want to go into this because it's tough. But I mean, anything that's worthwhile is tough. I think so. You're going to separate, the wheat from the chaff a little bit here when it comes to people that are going to take part and people that aren't. So if kind of ramping up here, if you were a business that's doing DoD contracts, what's your advice to them right now in the first part of 2025?
Ideally, well, not ideally, probably most businesses working with DoD contracts are aware of the term, or at least aware of the ground basis of what CMMC is and what it means and how that could or could not affect them. I would hope. If not, then definitely use that as a wake-up call to just look into that, right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
But if you are aware of it, and hey, this is going to touch us at some point, but no one said anything yet, definitely reach out and we can help you start moving towards level 1 and then start making plans towards level 2. Reason being is, like we talked about with the bidding process, you're going to start to stand out, right? And it's going to get to a point now where, hey, this is going for proposal, and there's 10 different places that will bid on this, and these 2 are level 1 certified and they're working towards level 2. These 8 we've never heard from at all on cybersecurity. I wonder if that's going to start to weigh into the decision-making process, right? And then when you start to see level 2s popping up, man, they're already at this. We don't need to wonder, and then are we going to be able to use the product that they made for us? Because by the time that we get it, next year they'll have to be level 2, but if they didn't even start level 1 yet, what's going on with that? A lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny. So I'm in school, I was a procrastinator. Okay, so in college, it'd be 2:00 before I write the 10-page paper or something like that, which is horrible. I know, but I feel like it's I can muscle through this. I can muscle through it. It's just CMMC is not going to be level 2. Is not going to be a thing you're going to muscle through. Yeah. There's always that one time where you're I can do it, and then the 15-page paper comes up and things aren't clicking, and you're oh, I'm going to take the late penalty. I shouldn't have done this. Don't be in that position if you're going to need CMC level 1 or 2.
The late penalty in that line of work then is your livelihood, right? Yeah. You're all right, well, I guess we just don't take DoD contracts anymore. Bummer.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to wait for 2 years until we get the certification.
Yeah. Not a position you want to be in.
No.
Well, Mike, I appreciate the time you took to become a certified CMMC professional. And, if there's companies out there right now that are maybe just saying, we don't really know what the next step is, or we don't know how we're going to achieve this, reach out. We'd love to just have that conversation with you. And maybe it's a fit, maybe it's not, but we're here to guide you through that. So with that being said, thanks so much for tuning in to IT Unplugged, your place for anything cybersecurity, entrepreneurship, CMMC, compliance, all that other fun stuff. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.